Benchwarmers Podcast. I am Casey Coggins. We are minus Andrew Lira today, and it's Alvin Hebert and me doing some college basketball this week.
The college bros here.
We didn't want Andrew to just kind of sit quietly for an hour while we talk college basketball. One of the only sports that he doesn't really follow as closely. So with college basketball heating up, the early season tournaments wrapping up, we wanted to do a little bit on college basketball. First though, we just got to hit on some NFL stuff because last week we talked about the Carolina-Seattle game being an important game. And a couple weeks ago, me and Andrew were giving Alvin shit for talking about Seattle. Yeah. And in back-to-back weeks, Seattle have no business winning the game. And the teams that they were playing all but handed them the victory.
That Packers game, they won that game. Russell Wilson went down, got the score for them.
If Mike McCarthy goes for it on 4th and 2, I think they win that game. But instead they punt and give a team that just ran all over you a chance to just run out the clock. But I was looking at the numbers because I was like, how the hell did the Panthers lose this game? Because I have Christian McCaffrey on one of my fantasy teams, and the dude had 52 points, and he had 100 plus yards, 125 yards rushing, 112 yards receiving, and I was like, okay, well, what? I pull up team stats and I'm looking for some reason Carolina loses, and I think the reason they lose is because on third down, Seattle was 6 of 14 and they were 3 of 8, and on fourth down, Seattle was 2 of 2, while Carolina was 0 for 1.
Seahawks just got the stops when they needed them.
And then there was one turnover. Cam threw the one interception. Carolina had less penalties, more yards. They were about equal in time of possession. Everything stacked up that Carolina should have won that game, and yet here we are sitting with both teams at 6 and 5 now, but Seattle with the head-to-head wins the tiebreaker. And Cam Newton was 25 of 30, which is really good considering Cam
when you're talking about Cam
history. Yeah, but his QBR was 67.8, and Russell Wilson was 22 of 31, so a lower percentage, but he had 100 more yards, and he didn't have the interception. He was even sacked twice, and Cam wasn't sacked at all. But Russell Wilson's QBR was 92.4.
It's that one interception that knocks it down real hard, and they're converting on third downs.
Yeah, and it comes down to, I think it was with a minute left or so. Let me see when it was. A minute 45. Graham Gano missed a 52-yarder, which gave Seattle the ball at about midfield to go down and set up, because I don't think Carolina had any timeouts. So all they had to do was get in field goal position, and they win the game. So, I mean, they probably, even if Gano makes that field goal with a minute 45 left, Seattle's at least tying that game. I've seen it with Russell Wilson enough where I don't think he's the greatest quarterback in the league.
But he's clutch.
But he's, the next Tom Brady, because it seems like every single time you give that person the ball with less than 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, needing a field goal or a touchdown, they always deliver. You rarely ever see them fail in those situations.
He got that what the Skip Bayless calls
it factor.
Yeah, the clutch gene, man.
Yeah.
That's why I don't know why people knock on him. I know like he's not considered like he doesn't have like the talents of Aaron Rodgers or somebody like Pat Mahomes, but like he's a gamer.
Well, see, and that's what I was saying. I think like I've said it on one of the podcasts. I don't remember if it was before the season started or last season, but early on in Russell Wilson's career, I thought he was a mediocre quarterback playing with one of the best running backs in the league and the best defense in the league. I saw him as a better Blake Bortles early in his career. But now I consider him a bona fide like top 7 quarterback in the league.
I'm glad somebody else sees what I see.
And the only reason I thought Seattle was going to be like hot garbage this year was because their running backs couldn't stay healthy, their offensive line was garbage, and their defense was falling apart. And their offensive line has played much better than what you thought you were going to get out of them, and they've been able to run the ball really well over the last few weeks.
They finally found a running back that could stay healthy enough.
Well, he's finally healthy. Like Chris Carson had his injury issues like earlier this season, and last year he had them, but he stayed healthy over the last few games, and that's allowed him to kind of grab a stronghold on that running back 1 position.
It seems like their defense got better by subtraction ever since the Earl Thomas injury. Like
it's kind of one of those where you lose an important player and everybody knows that they don't have that safety net anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like, okay, I have to be on my P's and Q's if we're going to be able to play solid defense.
Because Cam Chancellor was there, but then he had the neck injury.
Yeah, had to retire.
And then you had Earl Thomas there, which was your safety net.
I mean,
he gets
you
injury.
You still have Bobby Wagner as the calming force. You still have. I think they still have Cliff Averill on the outside. They still have. Who else? They still have McDougall, who's been there for a few years.
Showing that he could play now.
Yeah,
that he's
Frank Clark, the Super Bowl MVP that they had. So they still have guys that have been there for a little while, but it's not the Legion of Boom anymore.
Yeah.
And they've really stepped up over these last few weeks to allow them to get on this hot streak, and kind of they hold all the cards to make the playoffs now. Like they won the 2 games that I thought they would lose, which would have kept them out of the playoffs, which is 2 weeks ago what me and Andrew were saying.
Yeah, because they laughing at me.
The Packers should have beat them, but the Packers have their own issues.
They're hard garbage.
We can get into that in a little bit. Talk about them for a second in a little bit. And then the Panthers, they just can't pull out close games.
It's like flip a coin.
Yeah, they just. I think it's like the Pittsburgh loss kind of changed the mindset of that team, where they seemed unsure of themselves. Like Cam had a good game and Christian McCaffrey had an awesome game, but if Christian McCaffrey wasn't on the team, they're blown out. Like even though Cam Newton had a solid game statistically, other than the 1 interception, 11 of those completions were to his running back, and almost half of his yards were to his running back.
He's his best wide receiver.
Yeah,
it's his running back.
So they choked, and then the Seahawks capitalized like they always do. So to touch on the Packers, though, they lose to Minnesota. They actually went for it on a 4th and 1, but they run like a tight formation, single back set, and try to run it up the middle instead of, going spread offense with Aaron Rodgers and letting him figure it out. Like, the play calling just
quarterback
seems...
sneak it.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying, well, Aaron Rodgers is missing throws that he doesn't normally, miss, and he's not taking the checkdowns, he's trying to make everything a big play. But it's the same thing that I said a couple weeks ago with Matt Stafford, doing having the lateral go awry in the Seattle game. Is if you're, Matt Stafford isn't Aaron Rodgers, but if you're a good quarterback and a great quarterback and you're getting these shitty play calls, you feel like the offense is sputtering, you feel like there's nothing that you can do, because if McCarthy's calling the plays and he calls in a play and every single play Aaron Rodgers goes, we're not running that, and calls a different play, what's going to be said? How is that going to play in the press conference?
Who has the real control here?
Because with Peyton Manning was always his own offensive coordinator, to where the offensive coordinator knew if he called a play and Peyton audibled, Peyton obviously knows what he's doing, and it was kind of brushed off because Peyton was in that offensive coordinator role just as much as the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
But when your offensive coordinator or your play caller is your head coach, and the head coach is supposed to be the dictator of the CEO of the team, he's supposed to demand the respect of everybody, and the star, your best player is no, I'm not going to do that, then the rest of the team is just going to be well, I don't have to listen to this guy, and it's going to crumble. So Aaron Rodgers is put into a tough situation. So now, while he's trying to run these stupid plays, he's we need to get something, my receivers aren't getting separation off the line of scrimmage.
He's missed some open passes to Devontae Adams, where he's open.
There was the one that he missed by 6 inches.
Yeah.
Where I think Devontae Adams could have made a better effort, but I don't. If that's not a bad miss. A bad miss was you remember that Phillip Rivers pass in the Denver Broncos game where he was throwing a bubble screen to the receiver and he missed the receiver by about 10 yards. That's a bad pass. Aaron Rodgers missed one by 6 inches.
Aaron Rodgers also is throwing the ball in the dirt, but he's always off balance when he's throwing the ball lately. He's not planted. He's always on the move. He's off the back foot. He doesn't look comfortable at all.
He doesn't. It's like he doesn't trust any of the players on his team other than Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is the only person that is, and Devontae Adams. Those are the only two players that he trusts fully on that team. And he looks like he's ready for a fresh start. He looks like he's ready to get out from under McCarthy, and then maybe you see him come back down and into that control, because Aaron Rodgers, to touch back on Russell Wilson became the second quarterback in NFL history to have a career passer rating over 100. The guy above him, the number one guy and the only guy before Russell Wilson joined him after this week, is Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has always been good completion percentage, no interceptions, good passer rating, and he seems to be awry right now, and it's not good for the Packers.
So McCarthy out at the end of the season.
There's a lot of coaches that I think, there are a lot of offensive coaches, maybe not the head coach. So a guy like Anthony Lynn in San Diego and Los Angeles for the Chargers, he's not going anywhere. He's a defensive-minded coach, and if their offense was sputtering, then you would look at I don't know who their coordinator is right now. I was gonna say Schottenheimer, but he's in Seattle. But there's a lot of teams that have good talent that need a better offensive coordinator. In that, like, Jason Garrett should be gone after this year. No matter what.
Yes.
Unless they win the Super Bowl.
That's his only chance of saving his job.
They're not going to. He has to be gone, and Scotland have to be gone. Those two guys have to be gone if they're going to be successful going forward.
I think McCarthy has to be gone too.
Yeah, McCarthy has to be gone. As a Lions fan, I think Jim Bob Cooter has to be gone.
Yeah. They're even saying Marvin Lewis is going to be out.
Marvin Lewis, he has to be gone.
He's been there too long to have so many mediocre seasons.
Yeah, he has to be gone. Todd Bowles is gone. Like, he needs to go. Who else? And if I'm the Redskins, I get rid of Jay Gruden.
You get rid of Jay Gruden?
I get rid of Jay Gruden in a heartbeat. There are more innovative coaches, and I think that's what you need in the NFL.
He should want to just leave just so he could join his brother in Raiders Nation.
Yeah. There are a lot, like I said, a lot of innovative coaches, and the most successful teams in the league have coaches that reinvent themselves every year. Like, Bill Belichick might not reinvent himself offensively, but defensively, he retools, gets new players in, has veterans that he knows that are going to be able to show the new guys how the systems ran, and he tweaks every single year. He's not Monty Kiffin running Tampa 2. He's not Dick LeBeau running the 3-4 in Pittsburgh. He's not
Smith.
Yeah, he's not those guys who just play the same style over and over, because eventually they're like, oh, okay, yeah, they're going to do this. Like, that's why Belichick was so successful against Peyton, was because Peyton would go in and he would see something that he saw on film, but Belichick knew that, and he would be like, okay, well, instead of you dropping back and covering this zone, you're actually going to blitz. We're going to rotate over this way, and we're going to sit on this route, because that's what he's going to want to throw this. He was so computerized that he saw that. He was like, okay, I'm going to throw this slant, and that's when you see somebody like Asante Samuel cutting the slant and taking it to the house for a pick six.
That's why the Ravens' defense are always so good, because they're good at disguising their blitzes and their zone coverages.
That's what I was listening to the Dan Le Batard show, and Mina Kimes was talking about it, because they were talking about Rodgers and how he looked so off. And she made a good point that Mike Zimmer was doing things that you don't really ever see him do. Like, he was showing the same things that he does, the double A gap blitz. Like, he loves putting the two linebackers right in front of the center, right in front of the quarterback. But instead of bringing them, he dropped them, and he brought corner blitzes a lot from the outside. And so he changed what he's done for so long that the protections weren't there, and they were getting free runners in, and they were getting pressure on Rodgers. And that's how you become successful and consistently successful in the league, is being able to know that, okay, we've been doing it this way for this long, that eventually we're going to line up in this formation, and they're going to know exactly what we're going to do. So why not slightly change it so they see it, they think we're going to run this play, we run this play instead, and it usually ends up being successful.
That's why you was hyping up the Rams head coach, and McVay and like Sean Payton and Andy Reid. I mean, Andy Reid, he got more creative with his formations, but Sean Payton and McVay, they're cookie cutter formations, but
even
they run so
Josh
many.
McDaniels in New England,
they run so many route trees out of that set offense.
The best offense that I've seen the Patriots run since the Randy Moss year was when they had the murderer and Rob Gronkowski, and they were running 2 tight end sets.
The murder.
But I mean, and to be fair, when they had Martellus Bennett, when they won the Super Bowl with Martellus Bennett a couple years ago, they get to run a single back set with Gronk on one side, with Martellus Bennett on one side, on the other, and then they have Julian Edelman and other white guy receiver on the other side. And that's what they run. They run like a base, I think it's the 11 formation, where it's 1 running back, 2 tight end, 2 receiver, and they run out of that. And they run 1,000 different plays out of that set, and it allows them to keep the same personnel on the field. It allows them to run the same formation so that a team can't tee off on them because they don't know what their cue is. They don't see a trip set to the right. When I watched the Panthers, I think it was the Panthers-Lions game, almost every single time the commentator brought up, they would put Greg Olsen and Christian McCaffrey on the same side, and then they would put 3 receivers on the other side. And so the defense could know, all right, well, Greg Olsen and Christian McCaffrey are going to run isolation routes. Cam Newton's not even going to look at these 3 receivers. He's going to look at one of these 2 guys and hope that they win their matchup because you have your best 2 offensive players on the same side of the field. And so the defense kind of gets to shift that way. And if you don't realize that and adjust it and run things out of that aren't easy to tee off on, you're not going to be successful.
Exactly.
Before we go on to NCAA, is there anything else of this past week in the NFL you wanted to bring up?
Hugh Jackson is a bitch. He got punked by 2 of his former players, man. It was just sad to watch.
Now, I agree with both Hugh Jackson and Baker Mayfield on this. Like people need to realize that both sides can be right. Now, Baker Mayfield he said it in the press conference. He is pretty much merely using that as motivation. Yeah. Like that's what motivated him this week to go out and thrash that team and he pretty much said that. He was like, yeah, he was over here and he was trying to get us to play for him, and he was talking about how he's here for us, and he's like, but then immediately he goes to this other team. And I know that if it's further than that, that's when I think Baker is going a little too far, because one, Hugh Jackson went to the job that he had, well, not necessarily the exact job, but he went to the team he was at before he got promoted to head coach of the Browns. He went to work with one of his best friends in Marvin Lewis, and he was fired by the Browns. He was fired.
Yeah. So it wasn't like he decided to quit and then he was like, "I'm going over here with these
guys." Yeah, he didn't, it wasn't like the Josh McDaniels where he says that he's going to sign with the Indianapolis Colts and then back out of the deal and stay with the same team.
Yeah,
it wasn't anything like that. So, but I do agree with Baker as using that as motivation, because you hear it all the time, and the pundit media talk is bulletin board material, finding something to hype you up.
Yeah.
Because it can get a little mundane that you're going out there and you're just playing another game, so you need a reason to really bring out more energy, especially in week 11, week 12 of an NFL season.
It's the same thing with Bill Belichick, and when he goes and faces coordinators and stuff, you think he's not.
Yeah.
I know he's emotionless, but you think in his head he's all you left me, like he's the Godfather, and he's all you're his son, and you left the family,
Yeah. All right. Well, we need to talk about NCAA basketball. We are 2 weeks into the season, 3 weeks into the season.
Haven't even touched it.
And I mean, it's hard to really talk about it a lot before the season starts, because it's a lot of speculation, and it would have been just all Duke talk. like
Zion talk.
So it was like we actually get to see some of these teams play, how the three freshmen at Duke mesh, how some of the other star freshmen kind of step into the college basketball light. And it's like you get to see Bol play. And you get to see him put up like 35 last night or 2 nights ago.
Did you catch
they
that
lost
clip
to
that
Texas
I tweeted
Southern,
you?
but I don't think so. I don't remember.
His stroke from 3-point land.
Oh yeah, it's so smooth. It's so
for that lanky guy.
It's so nice. He's we brought him up on one of the podcasts maybe before the season started. I brought him up how he's, that's the modern day thing. You have 7-footers that are, growing up, instead of being told, hey, you need to play back to the basket, they're like, you need to learn how to handle the ball. And so you're going to see a lot more Giannis. You're going to see a lot more Anthony Davis. You're going to see a lot more Porzingis and Karl Anthony Towns and Kevin Durant. Like, you're going to see more guys like that going forward. Now, the downside to that is at the same time you're also going to see more guys like Steph, more guys in that 6 foot to 6'4" range who, like Kyrie and Trae Young and Damian Lillard. Like, Giannis, as good as he is, he's not going to be able to guard Steph and Damian Lillard for the whole game.
No.
And so, like, he's going to get burned on a couple plays that he is guarding them, and 2, he's going to have to be off of him. And who else are you going to who else is going to be guarding them that they're going to still end up doing the things they do? So it's not like you're getting rid of all the little people. Just like you're not going to get rid of all the guys like Robin Lopez and Pau Gasol and the traditional back to the basket bigs, because that's still a necessary skill.
You still need somebody to rebound the ball.
Because if you don't have Steph Curry, the best way to neutralize Steph is, one, you have to be efficient and careful, like can't turn the ball over, but you have to shoot when the shot clock's within 5 seconds, but you have to make almost all of those shots because they're going to come down and shoot the ball within 5 seconds, and they're going to make a lot of their shots, and their shots are typically going to count for 3 points, whereas yours are going to count for 2. And it goes into that big math problem. So there's Zion and RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish, like I brought up, with the 3 freshmen at Duke, and then an hour away, another supremely talented freshman in Nasir Little.
That dunk.
Yeah, I mean, North Carolina is still the same kind of North Carolina you get used to, where they have the one superstar freshman, they have the one superstar like power forward,
veteran,
junior, senior, and then they have a few other like they have the one small forward who can light it up from 3
and defend.
Justin Jackson.
Or Justin Jackson.
Yeah. Those type of guys. And so they're that same type of team. Whereas this Duke team, for the first time for Coach K, is like a Kentucky team. The like stereotypical Kentucky team where it's Zion, RJ, Cam, and then Trey Jones, Tyus Jones' little brother, and then they have another freshman, and they really only have 2 or 3 main players that are upperclassmen. So they like the Tobacco Road rivalry. What is the game called? Is it Tobacco Road?
Yeah.
Like those two games during the regular season are going to be absolutely bonkers. Like I think even more so than they typically are. From the last I'd say 10 years, because thinking back to like the early 2000s or the late 90s when you had the Shane Battiers and the Antoine Jamesons and the
Vince
Jerry
Carters.
Stackhouse and the Vince Carters and Stackhouse go to Kentucky.
No, Stackhouse.
I thought he went to UNC.
He's Tar Heel.
But and then you have the JJ Redick years, and you have the Tyler Hansbrough years.
Elton Brand.
Yeah, so it's like
Carlos Boozer.
These games this year are gonna remind me of like those games, the Jay Williams Duke team. But I think with this year, it's more open than the years previous, where you feel like Virginia's going to be there because they're the prototypical college basketball team. Duke and Kentucky and North Carolina, they're going to be right around the top of the rankings for a lot of the year. But you see Gonzaga get their first number 1 ranking ever. You see teams like Nevada's number 5. You're seeing... Let me pull up the rest of these rankings.
Man, you got Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee at 6. You have Virginia Tech at 13. Florida State at 15. Iowa at 14. Buffalo at 21. Mississippi State at 25. And while these are like Power 5 conference teams, some of them, not Buffalo of course, when have you heard Mississippi State being a top 25 basketball team?
Never. To be frank.
Like Iowa has had decent teams, but to be a top 15 team,
no,
that's a little weird. Texas Tech is 20, and they've had good teams too, but
not like that high of a ranking.
I think they ended up getting to they were a number 3 seed in the tournament last year. So they had their team last year, but then they lost their best player in Jari Smith to the draft. But I can see there are a lot of teams that...
But then you got some of the old guards coming back too, like Syracuse. They're looking real good. Oregon might be legit, or they'll be in the tournament for real.
Yeah, the thing with Oregon is I don't think they're not the Oregon of 4 years ago. Still, they're not quite there yet. Indiana is a team that I think can surprise a lot of people this year. Texas has been playing really well.
They beat my Tar Heels.
Yeah, and then they lost to Michigan State, but that was Michigan State was just on fire from 3. And Michigan State is number 9 in the AP rankings. Even Ohio State, they haven't.
They're still undefeated, right?
Yeah, they haven't been in the top of the rankings in a few years.
I'm trying to think about when was the last time you heard Ohio State.
It was 5 years ago. They had a team, the D'Angelo Russell team. When they had D'Angelo Russell in his freshman year, they had a solid team then, and then they had a left-handed power forward that the Spurs drafted.
But I think they weren't really up there. Wasn't Greg? They had Greg Oden, didn't they?
That was 2008.
Yeah, that was
Mike Conley, Greg Oden. Yeah, they were the number 1 team all year.
Yeah.
It's you see Michigan as undefeated at 7. Auburn, after their pretty good season last year, they're at 8. So I feel like it's not... Before the season started, had we had this discussion, I would have said it's Duke and everybody else. And then I watched Duke the first 3 games, and I would have said it's Duke and everybody else. But then the last 3 games for Duke and the rest of the season for everybody else that I'm watching is Duke is... The reason Duke lost to Gonzaga is Gonzaga has maybe not as much top talent. Like, they don't have these unbelievable... Like, they don't have...
Yeah, they don't have the big names.
They don't have Zion, RJ, and Cam. Like, they don't have those 3 guys who are just unbelievably good. But they have 2 really, really good players. They have a 5th-year senior point guard. They have a Hall of Fame coach. They're like the Michigan State. They have just enough to, like, be able to out-execute a team like Duke with a bunch of freshmen being their main players and having Duke make the mental mistakes. And that's what happened in the game. And in Maui is Gonzaga knew what plays to run and how to execute, and Duke and RJ Barrett tried taking over the game, and I believe he took like the last 7 shots for Duke from the field, and he wasn't like they didn't look like they knew exactly what to do in that situation because they hadn't been in it together yet.
Well, that's like Gonzaga's MO for like the longest time now. They always find their way in the tournament by veteran leadership and defense. And that's what I saw against Duke. They held Duke to like 40-something% from the field while they shot a little bit over 50.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's Gonzaga.
Yeah.
They play gritty ball.
And they it's not like Gonzaga, the Adam Morrison Gonzaga.
Yeah, it's
because
not
it wasn't. Adam Morrison was the player, and they had a couple good players to go alongside him, but it was like, if he doesn't play well, we're screwed. Gonzaga's deep.
Yeah, they're always deep.
Like, if Rui doesn't have a good game, they have Brandon Clark. If Brandon Clark doesn't have a good game, Josh Perkins is there. So they have other guys, and then they have I think he's a freshman, Killian Tilly, who's another one of their big stretch center guys. What Zach Collins was for them 2 years ago when they went to the Final Four for the first time. Like, he was their first one and done player. I think that's what Killian Tilly is again for them. So, like, it's just... That's what I like about this year's NCAA is while you have these monster teams at the top, I don't feel like they're so much ahead of everybody else that it's just, mark it down.
Yeah, waiting for them for the championship game.
Yeah, it's like, it wouldn't surprise me to see the top 3 seeds are Gonzaga, or the top 3 teams are Gonzaga, Kansas, and Duke right now. It wouldn't surprise me to not see any of them in the Final Four, because if they go up against, like, if Duke goes up against that veteran-laden team with, the star player, that's the fun thing about the NCAA tournament, is if all it needs is one guy, like the Kemba Walker experience. Like, if you have that one player who...
Or the Wichita State experience.
Yeah, where it's like all seniors that just know how to play. They like YMCA basketball, like the old man at the Y.
Yeah.
Like pump fakes and up and unders and pick and roll.
You just hear him like, cut,
give and go. Yeah.
Cut.
So it's like, that's why I almost, when I was coming up with my Final Four, I almost put Purdue in there. Like, Purdue sitting at 19.
There's a couple people that...
And they have Carson Edwards who can score in a hurry. So it's like, that's why I picked 2 of the teams that I did for the Final Four, because I just think that all it takes is they have not just one guy who can take over a game. So if that one guy gets shut out, then the other guy can step up and put up 30 on them.
Yeah.
So let's talk the players first. Like I wanted to talk about who we think is going to win the Naismith Player of the Year. And then I wanted to talk about like a sleeper star. Like I pulled up the mock draft from ESPN, and I wanted to talk about a guy who maybe isn't on it or is outside of the lottery, that isn't getting enough attention, that could creep up into being a prominent name in college basketball, getting up into the lottery or the first round. And so let's start with the Naismith Player of the Year. Who do you think is going to win it?
I'm just going to go with the consensus on that one. I think Zion, just because he's the big name in college basketball right now. And he's balling out, like, for sure. He's living up to the hype. But just because he's the bigger name, I know he got R.J. Barrett on that squad also, but I feel like Zion's shadow.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of like the Tua thing in college football right now. It's like
his shadow's like casting over everybody.
He doesn't have the best numbers because Kyler Murray does. He doesn't have like. Tua had the one splash play against LSU, that like third down scramble for a touchdown, but that's the only play, and they haven't played as like the strongest schedule, but Kyler Murray has been putting up numbers against everybody. And he had that run last week against West Virginia where it looked like he was running and everybody else was in slow motion. But to his shadow is like he's doing things that we've never seen from an Alabama quarterback, and they're beating, like, he didn't. The reason his numbers aren't as good as they could as Kyler Murray is because
they're just smashing everybody.
They're winning by like 40 points a game. So
but he didn't play
fourth quarters.
You had the drama too with him and Coach Saban. Like, should he start Tua or
Jalen Hurts?
Yeah,
and so they were running like the 2 quarterback system early in the year. And I was inclined to go with Zion too. And the reason I didn't was, one, because you said Zion. And I couldn't just agree with you like that. That's not how this works. What fun would that be?
I wonder who you're gonna say. I think I probably have a name, but I just wonder.
So I went with R.J. Barrett.
Okay.
I went with the other Dookie. I wanted to go with somebody else. Like I thought about going with Rui Hachimura, who's my favorite player in college basketball.
I was thinking of Khalid Martin, or even Carson Edwards from Purdue.
Yeah, I don't think Caleb Martin or Carson Edwards are going to have quite the same years as the other guys. Another guy that I was thinking about is Nasir Little and Romeo Langford. Because those guys have to have great years for their teams to be great. Whereas if Zion ends up averaging 14 and 10, Duke still probably only loses 4 games. And with Rui, I think it's kind of the same thing where he has to be putting up 20s and 10s for them to stay in the top 5 ranking, for them to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So that's the other guy. Like, there are a couple other guys that I wanted to throw out there. Nickeil Alexander-Walker from Virginia Tech is just balling right now. And he's another guy where it's like Trae Young at OU, where if he doesn't play out, like if he doesn't lead the lead college basketball in scoring. Where's Virginia Tech going to end up? And I just brought up them being number 13 in the country right now.
Like, nobody's not even mentioned, like, Dedrick Lawson from Kansas.
Yeah,
like, he's another guy that he'll have to have, like a big year for Kansas to stay on top.
Yeah, pulling up, like, Nickeil Alexander-Walker's numbers right now are 19.6 points, 5.4 rebounds, and 4.4 assists. Like, that's not going to win him the player of the year because he's not going to have the splash value that Zion does. But the reason I'm saying RJ for Naismith is because he's going to outscore Zion. He's their main ball handler. He's evidently the closer. Like, he's kind of the focal, like, he's the head of the snake. Like, Zion is going to do Zion things where he gets a steal, breakaway dunks, and alley-oops. And
yeah, he's going to get the glitz and glamour.
Yeah. And RJ Barrett, you're going to look at the box score and be like, shit, Zion had 20 and 15. RJ Barrett had 33 and 10. Like, and 7 assists. Like that's going to be the type of, like, that's how they're going to be because...
But they're going to be talking about Zion.
Because Zion has the glitz and glamour, so I think a lot of teams are so focused on stopping him that it's going to allow RJ to operate one-on-one a lot more and not have as much weak side rotation. But I think it's going to be one of those two guys because they're both going to average around 25 points a game all season, and they're both going to be on a top 4 team all year. Really? I don't see Duke dropping out of the top 4 in the rankings ever. Unless they have, I don't have their schedule in front of me, but unless they have a week where they play like Virginia in North Carolina, like they're at Virginia at North Carolina and they drop both of those games, then they'd go down to like 5. That's so. They're just so freaking good. Before the Gonzaga game, I was thinking about it. And I was thinking about if they were the best college team
assembled
that, like, of the last 10 years, but then they lost to Gonzaga, and I was like,
you can't be the best if you lose.
And I was like, that's why they're not, because, and it wasn't because they lost, like. Every team loses. The last undefeated champion was Indiana in 76. Like, it doesn't happen anymore. It was the way that they lost. I realized that the teams that we brought up with Duke, like, they're not even the best Duke team assembled because, like, the 1990 Duke team with Grant Hill and Christian Laettner and Bobby Hurley.
Yeah, that was probably, like, the best team they assembled.
It was, I think 2000. I would probably go with their 2000 team.
Was that J.J. Redick year?
I'm pulling up that roster. I'm not sure which year it was.
Because didn't they have a year they had Elton Brand and Carlos Boozer on the
It was Mike Dunleavy, Carlos Boozer, Jay Williams in 2000. Oh, and Shane Battier. They had those 4 guys. But yeah, one of those years, one of those early 2000s, late 90s teams. Because the year after, the 2000-2001 was Jay Williams, Shane Battier, Mike Dunleavy, Carlos Boozer, Chris Duhon.
Dang, Chris Duhon. Haven't heard that name.
Yeah, he was a freshman then.
Oh, they probably had Elton Brand when they had Corey Maggette, right?
Yes, yeah. 98. Yeah. Elton Brand, Trajan Langdon, who ended up being in the NBA for a while, Corey Maggette, Shane Battier, So they,
his name is everywhere.
He was the guy who was there all 4 years. And there was a year with J.J. Redick that they were just absolutely nuts. Dante Jones, J.J. Redick, Daniel Ewing, Chris Duhon, Sheldon Williams. Those were their main guys then. And Dante Jones was averaging 18 points a game before he was getting into fights and shit in the NBA.
Relegated to bench warmer.
Like, it's just, you go through the years of their team. They had Luol Deng. They've always had
a stacked team.
Yeah, and so it's like, I don't know if I can even say that this year's team is their most talented team, because this year's team doesn't have players like the 1990 team when they beat Michigan, because they had, like, Christian Laettner is arguably the best college basketball player of all time. I mean he isn't. It's Kareem. I think Kareem or Pete Maravich are the best college basketball players of all time. But Grant Hill and Bobby Hurley, like those, you have a great point guard, you have a great small forward, and you have a great big, and that's college basketball in a nutshell. And to bring it around to Duke is they have three guys who kind of do the same thing, and as great as they do those things, they haven't figured out how to play off each other yet and accentuate their strengths. And they'll get there. Like, I'm not going to be surprised if they win the title, because I think they'll get there. But right now, like, that's why they lose to Gonzaga. Is Gonzaga knows who they are. The Gonzaga knows what players they have. They know their roles, and they know who's their closer, and they know what plays to run down the stretch. And that's why I think, like, Duke isn't the best Duke team, because if this year's Duke team played that 2000 team that I brought up with Jay Williams and Carlos Boozer and Chris Duhon and Shane Battier,
they would have got smashed on.
Carlos Boozer is completely locking down Zion Williamson. Jay Williams isn't going to be, like... Are you going to put Trey Jones on Jay Williams? Like we need to realize how great Jay Williams was before his motorcycle accident. I was just about to say. Like before he had his accident, I'm projecting here. He would have been a better career point guard than Chris Paul. And I can say that with almost, like, no doubt in my mind, remembering what Jay Williams was, because he was faster.
I kind of picture Jay Williams more of a more controlled and tempered Russell Westbrook type of player.
But see, that's why I think he's a better Chris Paul, is because he can do the same things that Chris Paul did, but
more athletic.
Yeah,
and faster.
Yeah, faster, stronger, bigger.
Probably even shoot better.
And so it's like Jay Williams, you'd have to hope that Cam Reddish could try to guard him, or RJ Barrett could try to guard him, because you're not going to guard him with Trey Jones. You can try to hide Trey Jones on Duhon,
yeah.
And then Shane Battier would just bully RJ Barrett or Cam Reddish, like.
He will for sure lock down Barrett.
Yeah,
sure.
And so it's like I don't know where this Duke team goes after that, and so it's that was why I had that realization. I was like, God, this, like, watching their first couple games, I was just like, even watching at the beginning of the Gonzaga game, because they just weren't. Gonzaga was playing lights out, and Duke was kind of hanging around in the first half, and I was like, if Duke figures it out this game, like they're going to go on a 20-something run and end up winning by 15. And it never clicked in that game. So let's talk about the sleeper star. I'm going to go first because you alluded to him. I was going to say Rui here, but I figured that we were going to talk about him enough. And he's enough of a star to not have to talk about him. And he is, in this mock draft, the 14 pick, which is the last lottery pick. Caleb Martin from Nevada. He has his twin, Cody, there, or his brother. I think they're twins. Cody, and they have Jordan Caroline, who's outstanding as well. But Caleb Martin is the heartbeat of that team.
Yes, definitely.
And he's the reason why they beat Texas. One of the reasons, like, him and Caroline just played outstanding that game. But he's the prototypical NBA player. Like, what you need your team to have. I've said it numerous times. You're not contending if you don't have a 6'6" to 6'10" wing player, like wing star. Like, you're not. You have to have that small forward type wing player who can score and defend, and just, you need LeBron, Kawhi, Giannis. Like, the best teams in the league right now all have that, or there are some semblances of it.
Yeah.
Where Memphis got the number 1 seed in the West, like the number 1 record in the West a couple days ago. They lost it, but Mike Conley and Marc Gasol are such a good tandem that they can kind of surpass the small forward.
Yeah, they could weather some storms. Yeah.
In Portland, they have Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, who helps kind of bridge that gap too. But you're not talking about Memphis winning a title. You're not talking about Portland winning a title. While they're going to these teams could make the playoffs, maybe even win a round, you're not really seriously saying they're a championship contender, because they don't have that guy. And Caleb Martin is that type of player, and he's slept on. He's not even on this mock draft from ESPN. Like, they don't have him being picked in either rounds. They have Matisse Thybulle from Washington. They have Udoka Azubuike from Kansas, who's a quality player. But he's not Caleb Martin.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, is he on that level? No.
They even have, like, Dean Wade, who I think is a good player. He's to, like, kind of keep an eye out for. He's kind of Kelly Olynyk. I had a name on the top of my head. This kind of tall, athletic Chandler Parsons type player, right, from Kansas State. But I don't even think he's Caleb Martin good. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to Caleb Martin, and like, I hope he continues the year he's having, because Nevada's ranked number 5 in the country right now, and they don't have a player on this mock draft. They don't. Not Caroline, not Cody, not nobody.
Whose mock draft did you pick up?
ESPN's.
Jesus, lack it.
Yeah, so you have the number 5 team in the country without a guy in the top 60 picks of the NBA, which I think really says something about the Nevada team. Is they're a team. They're the sum of the parts is something that can be great. And I think they played Loyola Chicago. I think that might be who they lost to in the NCAA tournament. They lost to somebody really good, and it was a close game.
Was that when Loyola went on their little run?
Yeah, Loyola won or made it to the Final Four.
Yeah.
While I check this, who is your sleeper star?
My sleeper star is he's probably not on your mock draft if Caleb is not on there. Is Kellen Grady from Davidson.
Yeah, I told you he wasn't on it. That's right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And like this guy, he could shoot the ball, man. Like I understand he's a little bit small. He's 6'4", right? And he's just a sophomore, so
Little bit small from Davidson. Who does that sound like?
yeah, exactly, right? And so he's a sophomore though, so he could still like hold out on joining the NBA draft this year. I guess that's why they probably don't have him on there. Or again, ESPN just slacking. But this guy, he could shoot from all over the floor. He could shoot off the dribble, on the move. He could do some play. He's not super athletic, but he's a playmaker, and he could move off the ball pretty well. Now, again, he does. He's a little bit small, so he's going to have to, probably develop a defensive game. But again, in the NBA these days, do you need a defense? You probably just need one or two guys, and not your point guard or shooting guard.
You don't need to be Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, but
defensively
adequate.
You need to understand team defense.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is trying. You have to be a try-hard.
Yeah, I think definitely he'll have to be a try-hard. But again, he's just a sophomore. And his freshman year, he averaged 18 points. So I'm just... And you got a guy that can shoot from the three also. So it's like... I don't want to compare him to Steph Curry, but I mean, like...
Those are going to come just because of the school he goes to, the position he plays.
And also the light that they're putting him under. They're putting him under the same light that they said about Steph Curry when he was coming out.
Right. I think that one of the key differences to Steph Curry than Grady is Steph was the son of one of the best three-point shooters in NBA history already.
Yeah. So he kind of had the name on.
Yeah, he kind of.
But like the same stuff that they're knocking Grady on is pretty much the same stuff that they knocked on Steph Curry when he was coming out for the draft.
Yeah. So.
And look at Steph Curry now.
Right. So I did pull it up. So Nevada did lose to Loyola Chicago, who ended up making the Final Four. They lost by 1, and they were down 1 point with 30 seconds left, and then they gave up the clutch. It was a corner 3, wing 3 by Marcus Towns that iced the game pretty much. Nevada came down and Caleb Martin made a 3 to make it 68-69, but it was a 1-point game. And that's kind of the Nevada, because they beat Texas in overtime, I believe. That was an incredible game. That came down to the wire. It ended up being 87-83. Went into OT, and that was the game where I think Nevada made a game-tying play to send it into overtime. Jordan Caroline. Oh, that's right. They called a foul on Texas, and Caroline only made one of the free throws, and it sent it into overtime. And then in overtime, they kind of they held on. And then they beat the Cincinnati team that I had picked to win it all, because Cincinnati was damn good last year. Yeah. And Cincinnati went up huge in the first half, and then they just kind of got tired. They were up 27-10, and they were up. What were they at? They were up 44-32 a half, and they got up. They were up 17 points, 18 points with 14 minutes left. 22 with 11. I'm sorry, I'm just counting these. Yeah, it was a 22-point game with 11 minutes left. Cincinnati was up, and Nevada came back and won by 4. So I feel like they're getting slept on too much. Like the players, the team isn't getting slept on, but the players are getting slept on from there.
And they're all veteran players that came back.
Yeah. It's not like they lost 2 of those main guys. They came back to run it. They're running it back. So let's do Final Four, and then we can get into the Fire Dire and Prophecies. We won't pick a national champion just because it's like throwing a dart like
too early to call it.
Yeah, it's a giant ass board that it's like you could just shout a team out
and then they could find a reason why and they'd be like, exactly. So lead off with your Final Four. I'm sure we have at least. I'm sure we have 2 teams the same, but I don't think we have 3. Because I kind of went a little off the. I'd be surprised if we had 3 teams the same. So go ahead and go for it. All right. Well, my Final Four, of course, not in any particular order.
Exactly.
Nevada, Duke. I think Gonzaga is going to stay hot and continue that. And then add a little asterisk because my heart, Tar Heels, I always got to mention them. But I'm going to say Kentucky. I kind of wanted to lead off to probably like Tennessee or somebody. But I was like, that's probably
that's kind of the thing for me is I've talked about how wide open this year seems. Like Kentucky doesn't seem as good, and Kansas, they're ranked 2, but they don't seem as good to me. And
I never trust Kansas.
And like North Carolina, they're the North Carolina that I've watched for years. Like every year with Roy Williams
team
is that. You know, they'll have their ups and downs, and really who knows what you're going to see in the tournament. Like you could see a random upset of North Carolina because you're banking on Little and Luke May to carry you. But we did have 3. I didn't know you were going to be as high on Nevada as I am.
I think they're going to be real stingy, man.
The main reason I put Nevada in here is the conference that they play in. Well, Duke has to go through the ACC, which is like Basketball Conference USA, and Gonzaga even has a tougher road in their conference. Their conference isn't very good either because it's St. Mary's is their only competition. But Gonzaga also plays. Like they played the Maui Invitational and played Duke, and they're showing the teams that they're playing top ranked teams, and they're winning. So, I think Gonzaga is probably the most well-rounded team in the country, and I don't need to continue on my Hachimura like fanboying, But yeah, so Gonzaga, Duke, and Nevada, I see there. Duke, just because they're unbelievably good, and the top talent that they have is in the NCAA tournament. It could be one of the guys that's going to lead them to a win. It just depends on the team that they're playing. Yeah. If the team they're playing has a dominant big and their guards are a little weak, then you're going to see Cam Reddish and RJ Barrett carry the load, and Zion's main focus is going to be trying to I can't think of the other center's name that they have. It's like Delu Delacour or something like that.
Some weird name.
It's him and Williamson will be focused on, stopping Luke May and allowing Cam Reddish and RJ Barrett to go at Nazil and Cam Johnson and the guards of UNC. Same thing with Virginia and DeAndre Hunter. Like, Zion's main focus there has to be slowing him down. But yeah, the fourth team, I went a little off the wall. I mean, they're ranked 8 right now. They have 2 guards who can be lights out.
Purdue?
I went Auburn. Purdue's 19, and like I said earlier, wouldn't surprise me one bit if they went on a run. Because if a team gets hot and they just, like Loyola Chicago, they just had something about them. They were playing for each other, and then they had a couple guys who just made incredibly big shots. Hell, they played Miami in the first round, and it took a banked-in three-pointer as time expired
to get that rolling.
Yeah. So you really never know. And watching Auburn lose to Duke, they have a shooting guard because they have Bryce Brown, who's like an all SEC player. But Hunter is just lights out, putting up numbers. I think he put 33 up on Duke. And Duke just kind of pulled away at the end. But he's the type of player where I see it's one of the reasons why Buddy Hield's year at OU, when he went crazy, I had picked them to go to the Final Four because I was like, all you need is that guy. Like, whatever the rest of your team is, I mean, you have to have a good team, but if you have the one guy who's just going to play out of his mind for 7 games, like, you're guaranteed to go to the Final Four. Yeah. So I think Auburn has
they got 2 guys.
They have 2 guys that can do that. So, I mean, if I had to place a bet today on who's winning the national title, I'm going to just fall in line with everybody else and say Duke.
I can't even say that.
but it's too early to give kind of. We'll come back around January
closer to March
15th. Yeah. When teams are in conference and March Madness is right around the corner to give our actual all right, these are the teams that we'll come back to our picks today and change if we need to, or stay strong on our picks, and then we'll pick a national champion. Well, let's finish up. Let's get into On Fire and Dyer and Prophecies. Again, I'll lead off here. My On Fire, the Ohio State University. Really just showing Jim Harbaugh where he exists in college football landscape. He's still yet to beat Ohio State, and they just put a smackdown.
Shellacking.
It's difficult because Ohio State's just a bad matchup for Michigan. That's what it comes down to. They do things that Michigan just doesn't match up well against. And
we alluded to before we started, what was it, the 3
just back to back
what was it, turnovers or just bad plays, and just gifted them 21 points.
Yeah, it went from a tie game to being down 3 scores in the blink of an eye, and they never recovered. It possibly catapults Ohio State into the playoff again. It just, depending on how this weekend goes, we'll see where it ends up. If they make the playoffs this year, I think this Ohio State team would probably be the worst playoff team in the 4 years of the playoff.
Ohio State?
This Ohio State team is probably the worst of the playoff teams since they started it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, I would rather see them put Georgia having lost to Alabama in it again. I don't want to see Ohio State in the playoffs. So who's on your fire line?
My fire is the Los Angeles Clippers, the team that we said basically like they're dead in the water. You're the second fiddle LA team, of course, because they got LeBron James on the other side. But right now, because of what's been going on, like with Golden State, Lakers are not as they're not consistent. They're number one in the West right now, and they're beating teams. They're not like beating weak teams that are like bottom of the barrel. They're beating Portland. They're beating Oklahoma. They're beating. They beat the Warriors.
They're beating off.
You know what I mean? Like, so without a star player, a legit star player, they're showing this. If you play as a unit, play as a team, and you got a good coach, Doc Rivers, I do think he's a good coach.
Yeah,
you could win games.
In the last 2 weeks, they beat the Bucks, the Warriors, the Spurs,
I even think
the Grizzlies, and the Blazers.
I think they even beaten Portland twice already, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I would have to go to the different.
Yeah, I'll have to look deeper.
They beat the Rockets.
Yeah,
they beat the Rockets twice.
Or it could have been them that they beat twice. But
they've only played Portland one time.
Like I said, they're not beating bottom feeder teams. They're beating contenders.
Oh, two. They lost to the Blazers the first time. I overlooked the one.
Oh, okay. But again, like I said, they're beating teams that are up there in the West.
Right. This year's Clippers team, it's some of the teams that are winning consistently right now have similar formulas where it's like they don't have, a top 10 player in the league, but they have everybody knows their role. Everybody's like they're playing great team basketball, and Doc Rivers is a good coach. So it's like he's always been able to motivate players to play for him. They're playing quality team basketball.
I think their leading scorer is Lou Williams.
Well,
and he's coming off the bench.
Right. I'm pretty sure he led them in scoring last year too.
And then you got Tobias Harris, who's quietly averaging over 20 points and getting almost 10 rebounds a game.
Yeah, and then when they play Boban, he gets like 10 points in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So who's in dire for you?
Oh, man. In dire for me, fucking Michigan. We just alluded to them just now, but this time I felt like Harbaugh was going to get that elusive win against Ohio State, but they failed me.
I want to allude to this again. It's like with Michigan and Jim Harbaugh against Ohio State, it's almost like when teams play the Patriots in the playoffs. It's like they get as good as much as they could match up, and like sometimes it could even be the better team. They just like wet their pants with excitement, and they just like panic, and they don't know what to do in the position they're in, and then all that happens is Belichick and Brady, they just kind of look at each other and they're like, just stay consistent, like just keep marching, like just like left foot after one foot after another, just keep on moving, like don't worry, just play our game. We don't need to try to do anything spectacular, and the other team just kind of crumbles in front of them.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I can't blame that on Harbaugh. Like, you had the horrible punt, and then what was it, the INT?
Yeah. That was out of like their end zone.
Yeah.
Because I think they stopped them on fourth down, like 4th and goal. I believe in.
Yeah,
it was like, oh yeah, Michigan can, like, all they have to do is get a good drive here, and they have, momentum and everything, and then all of a sudden it's
once they gifted them those 21 points.
It was like 41-17 in the blink of an eye. Like all of a sudden it was
once they gifted them those three touchdowns right there, it was just like turn off the TV.
Right.
I was like, God.
I did the same thing. Mayan Dyer is a guy who should have lost his job. Joe Flacco, I believe your career in Baltimore should be over.
Oh, that's done.
Should be, because white guys doing white guy things for white guys.
Gotta stick together.
It's a brotherhood.
It's like y'all became the minorities now.
If John Harbaugh goes back to Joe Flacco,
that's him giving up his job.
Like, I don't know what I would do. Like, you were given this lightning in a bottle that's like that. I mean, you're still only 6-5, and you're the sixth seed right now, and if the season ended, you're in the playoffs because you won the last 2 games with Lamar Jackson. And it's like, you don't want to run him as much as you have. You want to, like, I want to let them, like, have him throw a little more, like, call more passing plays, but be smart about it. But you're running for like 300 yards as a team in back-to-back games with a quarterback and a no-name running back.
Gus Edwards.
Yeah, so, like, Joe Flacco should just never see the field in the Baltimore uniform anymore. Unless he's like, I'm going to collect my paychecks and be a backup quarterback the rest of my career in Baltimore. Other than that, like, there are some teams who would love to have him.
Jaguars.
Buffalo. Like,
Jets.
Tampa Bay. Take your talent somewhere else. You need to be done. Again, if Baltimore decides to go back to Joe Flacco, I just give up on them.
That's Harbaugh giving up his job. You guys were crumbling under Flacco before he got hurt. Like, you guys rode his wave for a little bit in the beginning of the season, and then all of a sudden,
it went back to looking like last year was.
Yeah. Inadequate in all kinds of ways.
Right.
And like, I know he's raw still in Jackson, but you could just tell like the players' mentality. Like, there's so much more excitement.
That's kind of, it's what you see in Cleveland. It's what you see in Arizona. It's what you saw glimpses of in New York. And you've seen a tiny little bit in Buffalo with the rookie quarterbacks. Is when they came into play and they like made their starts, there's just a different buzz, like, in the stadium. Like, even if you don't make the playoffs, even if you're the worst team in the league, like Arizona record-wise is with Oakland, and even like Buffalo, they shouldn't have 4 wins. That's a joke. And like the Jets, like the Browns are 4-6-1. They're not killing teams either, but like you know now that you have something. Like, you know that you can invest. You can invest, and this is something that I said before the season is, if you hit on a rookie quarterback, you have 4 years to make it to the Super Bowl. Like, that's like the Rams need to make it this year or next year, because then they have to pay Goff. Like, Seattle is having all their issues because they had to pay Russell Wilson.
Well, the Cowboys, they were trying to pay the Legion of Boom at the same time.
The Cowboys are going to have issues after next season. Like, you have to hit, because it allows you to pay the premier position $500,000, like compared to everybody else, and so it allows you to pay an offensive line, pay a defense to be tops in the league, and you get to utilize the greatness of the quarterback you have and have a great team around him. And that helps the quarterback develop for the future, too. Because I don't see Jared Goff just falling off of the map and being no good anymore. So you need to utilize this year as all right, you're figuring out how NFL defenses look. You're figuring out how hard you need to throw the ball on this 5-yard out, how much touch you need to put on this 15-yard post, all those little intricacies and how to read an NFL defense in real time. So it's you just can't go back to Joe. You have to, even if you miss the playoffs, you have to know that you have this guy and you want to develop him, because the Ravens defense is hella good.
Oh yeah, they're number one scoring defense.
And so now you can focus on not having to pay your quarterback all that much, having this great defense, and now in the drafts like this year and next year, focus on your offensive line, your wide receiver position, your running back position, and get those skill players to go with Lamar Jackson. And it's just icing on the cake.
Yeah.
So that's my dire prophesize for the vote.
PSG and Liverpool play tomorrow, I believe it is. Now, if Neymar and Mbappe come back healthy for that game, Liverpool's done. That's like a 3-1 game. With Cavani and Mbappe, the way Mbappe and Neymar has been playing, those two as a tandem.
That's just unfair. That's just unfair.
It is. And then, their defense is pretty good, and they're not allowing teams to score probably more than 1 or 2 goals on them all year. So, and they're just putting up 3-6.
Yeah.
Just running rampant in the French league like it's retarded.
So just PSG knocking out Liverpool.
Oh, yeah.
Are they on to the knockout stages too?
Is this the knockout?
I know. I saw the scores earlier. I didn't know if they were already in the knockout stages, but
I did not check that either. But the way those two are going at it, you can't catch them. They're too fast.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just unfair. My prophecy is, as we all know, I'm a fan of chaos when it comes to sports.
Of course.
Especially college football.
Of course.
That's the most fun for chaos. Northwestern, win it. Texas, win it. Both those teams pulling off the upset. The only upset that I don't want to see is Georgia. Because if Georgia beats Alabama, then we're all fucked, because they're not going to knock Alabama out of the playoff, and they're going to have to...
It's going to be last year again.
Yeah.
Where even though they didn't win the conference title, you still put them in the playoffs just because it's Bama.
That's the worst. The worst case scenario is Georgia winning for me. But
don't even get me started on their schedule again.
But Northwestern and Texas winning and Georgia losing... all hell breaks loose. Who the fuck are you going to put in now? Who? Who?
We need a control on the madness here. It's not March Madness.
It's going to be hilarious. That's my prophecy.
It's only hype when it's NCAA March Madness. It's not hype when it's come to college football.
Oh, it's always hype.
It's going to be hype. If Georgia wins...
Wait until January, and I'm talking about the Australian Open.
If Georgia wins, if they beat Bama, I dare them to keep Bama out the fucking playoffs this year.
Not gonna happen.
Dare them to do it.
Not gonna happen.
Because it should happen.
It's not going to.
The weakest schedule, and you don't win the conference. Sorry. Wait till the year they put in 8 teams for the playoffs.
Okay, well... hold on to that thought for next week, because we will know who's going to be in the playoffs after Saturday.
I kind of want your mayhem to happen just so I want to see.
Just see what happens.
I want to see.
That.
Even though I know the answer, but I just want to see if they got the balls.
The main reason I root for chaos is because they aren't at an 18 playoff yet. Once they go to 8, then I'm not going to be rooting for chaos.
Because there is no more chaos.
Because, well, there still will be like a 9th and 10th team. Well, why don't they go in? Why? No, you have rules.
And then you're just going to extend it to a 16 team.
No. Just last time I'll say this tonight, because it's the first time I'm saying this tonight. 18 playoff. Your 5 Power 5 conference champions are in. Pac-12, Big 10, ACC, SEC, Big 12. You win your conference, you're in. You have 3 at large. You're the highest ranked non-Power 5 team. You're UCF. In. 2 at large. Alabama, you're in. Every year. It's Alabama. Every year. And then it gives you the 1 at large for Notre Dame. Like, I know that the Notre Dame's to be in. Like, that's where it's really going to be splitting hairs. Like, Notre Dame not being in a conference would hurt them. But if they're not playing anybody good anyways, you can still make it in, like, because now what are they gonna say? Oh, undefeated Notre Dame isn't better than 1-loss Michigan. Michigan didn't win their conference, so Ohio State won.
And they got stumped.
So that's why I think that almost knocks out every criticism that people would have. So that wraps up this edition of the 2-Man Benchwarmers podcast. I'm Casey Coggins with Alvin Hebert.
We're starting the madness early.
Madness all the time.